Yeah. Family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. Oh, right. Yeah. Here we go.
So, now let's come to the first question. The first serious question is this. Are ethics, what's good or bad, right or wrong, are ethics universal or are ethics relative? Let's talk about the whole situation so we can understand how complex it is. Are ethics universal? They apply to all people at all time. Are they relative? It depends. We begin by acknowledging that what's right or wrong in one culture or at one time may not be wrong in another. So we use the example of marrying off our 15-year-old daughters. 100 years ago, we had no problem with it. Today, for some reason, it seems that some people have a problem with it.
For some reason.
Right? So, times have changed, and so the question becomes, we acknowledge that there's some change here. What was wrong, what was right at one time, we'll not consider wrong. What's right in some cultures, it's considered wrong in others. So that, for instance, in India, we send our 8-year-old children off to work in the factory for 12 hours today because we need to survive. It's a good thing, and we are glad that our children are going off and helping to support the family. Good in one culture. Anyone in the United States? Many people in the United States look at that and say, that's child labor. That is terrible. I cannot buy tennis shoes that were made in a sweatshop or by child labor. So we have various examples of things that are deemed right or wrong in some cultures at different times. Things like child labor or breast ironing is the example. All these examples come from Mitsoni, so I didn't stay up late last night trying to think any of these up. Breast ironing, the practice of massaging or beating down the breasts so as to not have the sexual advances of men. Right? Some cultures consider that a good thing. Tell your daughters to engage in that. Adult sex with teens or children. I mean, today that is a terrible crime. In the ancient times and in other periods. Let's think again of the example of the quinceañera, 15-year-old. Today we consider her a minor. Back then, 15 years old, we consider her an adult. Pederasty, that was an example that's taken from the ancient philosophers. Remember people like Socrates and Plato, Aristotle, they lived in a time when many adult men had relationships with boys. Today we look at it as sexually deviant. At that time, it was not considered sexually deviant. Female circumcision, or the other name that we often hear of it is female genital mutilation, the removal of the help me out with the biology, the removal of the... There you go. In some cultures, that's what they do. They don't see anything wrong with that. Other cultures, where that's not practiced, they're going to say, that's wrong. All those examples come from Mitsoni's work of how it is that one thing could be right in one time or in one culture, wrong in another time or another culture. That would lead us to believe then that there's something relative about ethics. So let's talk about relative ethics first, and then we'll come back to universal ethics. Relative ethics then, or ethical relativists, if you take this sort of view that everything depends, then you're an ethical relativist. You believe that everything is relative, it depends. They see the difference in what's perceived to be right or wrong. So they look at that, let's use an example, child labor. Okay? They recognize in India, especially in another era, child labor didn't seem to be we didn't judge it to be a bad thing. Today, we judge it to be a bad thing. They see the differences there. That there are no permanent, universal, objective values or standards. That would be, the universalists believe that there are objective standards or values so that everyone in this room could agree on what's good or what's bad. Universalists think we can all agree, for instance, that lying is bad. The relativist in the room says, wait a minute, lying is not always bad. Let me give you an example. Relativists say that ethics have a social origin, which is simply to say that we're programmed to think in a certain way. Geert Hofstede was a sociologist who said that culture is the software of the mind. I love that analogy. Culture is the software of the mind, simply meaning that Mario is of one culture. He was programmed to think in a certain way by his parents, his grandparents, his teachers, his friends. He received one programming. And the young girl who was born 10 years ago in Southeast Asia, she was born in a different culture. She's programmed in a different way. Different place, different culture, different language, different age. So how interesting then that ethical relativists would say culture makes a difference, how you're programmed to think about these things, because you're programmed to think that certain things are right or certain things are wrong. You're programmed to think that it's wrong to marry off your 15-year-old. 100 years ago, we weren't programmed to think that way. Arguments for relativism, probably an overstatement since I only see one argument. Relativists would argue that there's not one single right way to live. As parents, we might tell our children that there's a certain way that you have to do things, a certain way to live. I think relativists would say, no, it's not necessarily the case. I was programmed to think that one thing is right. My children are going to see those same things through another lens. What's right or what's wrong depends on your perspective. And my children and I may not agree on that. I may say that something is wrong, like the issue of same-sex marriage, since that's going to be the hot issue this year in the Supreme Court. Same-sex marriage is wrong. That's the way that I was raised. I'm 80 years old now, and I just have believed my whole entire life that that's wrong. But now my granddaughter or my grandson comes along and challenges that whole thing and sees it from a different perspective. From my generation, we were taught to believe that something is wrong. Ethical universalists. My granddaughter, my grandson, doesn't seem to see it through the same lens.
Because why?
Help me out. What do you think could be some of the reasons?
Well, atmosphere. Where they grew up, in school, and who their influences are there.
There you go.
Technology, media, where they get different ideas. Their morals don't just come from home.
So how fascinating. When we talk about culture, we're not talking about just geographical culture. The people in Texas are different from the people in Ohio. We're also talking about different age groups. Because, look, just think about it. Look around the room and think of the people who are closer to your age. You shared certain experiences with them. If you remember the day in which Kennedy was assassinated and where you were when Kennedy was assassinated, when that was announced, then you share certain common experiences with them that others of us may not relate to. Follow me? And so how interesting that even different age groups share a certain outlook on certain issues. When it comes to ethical issues, isn't it true that different age groups are going to take a look at ethical issues in different ways? Older generations might have views that are more universalist. This is right and this is wrong. People who are growing up today, our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, they may have a very different view of what's right and what's wrong.
People that live there in the Depression, gosh, I mean, they won't spend
How were they programmed to think? You cannot spend a dime.
the money.
My two grandmothers were raised in the Depression, so I knew it well, right? We'd go over to their house, and what would they would serve gravy bread. You ever had gravy bread? Take a slice of bread, put gravy on top, that's dinner, right? I mean, why would you spend money on chicken, right? What if the Depression were happening? I mean, they were just programmed to think in that
Chicken was
thrifty
considered
way.
a rich man's meal, when I was growing up.
So how interesting that we're programmed to think in different ways, and that's what the ethical relativists point out. Vincent?
So is it relative or universal? You're saying it's besides like culture, your mind is a software. But it could be, say for instance, the importance. You just said the Kennedy assassination. Some will know where they were at that time. Or others will be, I know where I was when John Lennon got killed.
There you go.
He's more important than President Kennedy.
So it sounds like that person, I mean, the relativists are going to point out how it is that we're all different in that respect. So it's going to be tough to come up with a universal definition of good because we all come from different cultures, we come from different age groups, we look at different things from different views. So how are we going to come up with saying that something is good or bad or right or wrong? Are we all going to be able to agree? Universalists are going to say yes, relativists are going to say No. Everyone has their own perspective.
So.
For relativists, then, something is right, something is considered right, if it's consistent with the society's folk ways. Have we heard of that word before? And it's wrong if it goes against the folk ways. So I guess the question is, what are the folk ways? The folk ways are those things that we do as folks. They develop over time, they're hard to change, we just do those things as folks. So as folks here in Texas, we have this way of talking, y'all, right? That developed over time. In order to change that, that's going to be hard to change. You follow me? We have certain folk ways, things that happen over time. And so now, rather than using y'all, let's use y'all. A Yankee comes from the north now, comes to Texas and tells us, y'all is not correct. You follow me? That's wrong. You shouldn't say y'all. You should say you all. Follow me? That's someone else coming from another context saying what's good or bad, right or wrong. So folk ways then, essentially the relativists would say what we consider to be good or bad is whether it fits with the folk ways, which is essentially what all of us believe over time. Obviously there's a folk way in this room about listening respectfully to teachers. Don't know where you learned that. Think for a moment about where you learned that, right? All those days that we sat in those seats that were all in a line as children, right? We learn to listen with respect to the teacher. How interesting that we continue to do that today. Such that if someone were to be really rude in this class, you'd probably turn to him or her and be like, boy, they were rude. Did you see how they treated Father Jamie? Father Jamie was talking and they were just interrupting him. Follow me? That's a folk way. Something is good or bad depending on how it fits with the folk way, how it is that we're accustomed to relating to one another. The folk way for this group could be very different from the folk way in a high school or an elementary school classroom. You follow me? According to this view then, 19th century child labor was not wrong necessarily. Because the folk way at that time, what we did as folks was we married off our 15-year-old daughters. And we put our children to work to help support the family. You follow me? That was the folk way at that time, so it wasn't wrong at that time. It fit with our folk way, that's the way that we did it. Cultural relativism, so there are two things that we're talking about. When we talk about relativism, two things could be relative. One is cultural relativism, and the other is ethical relativism. What's the difference? That some things are different by culture, so we know that some cultures are different, right? In Texas, we have the culture saying y'all. Those Yankees up north, they say you all, okay? So there are different things, cultures have do different things. Here in Texas, in the Hispanic culture, we celebrate quinceañeras. The Yankees in Ohio, got news for you, they don't celebrate quinceañeras. Different cultures, there's a cultural relativism, they're different. The question is there an ethical relativism? Are things ethically relative? Things are definitely culturally relative. They change based on culture. Are things ethically relative? Are things right or wrong depending on the culture? Ethical relativism, then, would claim that there are different ethical standards depending on the context. So, some practices that are morally acceptable in one culture might be perceived as unacceptable or unethical in another. And the examples that Mitsoni cites are child labor, could be okay in one culture, not okay in another. Wife or child battery, think about the example of spanking, right? Had breakfast with a gentleman in our community yesterday who said that the problem with our schools is simply this, that back then when we misbehaved, they spanked us. You know what I mean? They disciplined us, and there's a certain view about whether that's right or wrong. What's the current folk way in Texas? Are we allowed to paddle? It was a pastoral council meeting last night too, wasn't it? Pastoral council meeting, we were talking about students being paddled at school. Not that anyone on a pastoral council had ever paddled in school.
Except for John.
Sounds a lot.
How interesting that the folk way at that time was that there was nothing wrong with that. Even the parents approved of that. It slowly changed over time. These things don't change overnight. It has slowly changed, so that what's happening in our schools today, how many of our principals have paddles that they pull out every day? You don't do that. The folk way has changed, but for those of us who knew another way, we think to ourselves, you know what? It was probably better. That folk way that we used to have was better in some ways.
Now the students carry the Bibles.
In many ways, it's interesting how the role of parenting and teaching and all has changed, because back then, we were the parents or we were the teacher and we were in control. Now, many parents and many teachers feel they have less control. Other examples that Mitsoni cites are polygamy. Okay? Polygamy, having more than one wife. What's wrong with having 16 wives? Says the Mormon. That's an exaggeration, perhaps. Yeah, there are some sects of Mormons, some sects of Mormons that practice polygamy, right? Some people would look at that and say, what's wrong with that? Other people would look at that and say, what do you mean what's wrong with that? Other examples, cannibalism. You eat chickens, you eat cows, you eat pigs, but you won't eat that other animal that we call the human animal? And you're going to judge other people who do? It's pretty widely accepted that we don't eat people. Did we eat people centuries ago or in certain cultures?
Sure, some did it to survive.
It's a source of meat, source of protein. Infanticide, same thing, right? Anytime we see CID at the end of the word, it means the killing of someone. Homicide, suicide, infanticide, regicide. So, the claims of relativism, if you are a relativist then, you say that all ethical standards will always be relative. It always depends. It depends on who you are, how you see the situation. It depends.
And depends on the future inventions in medicine, new discoveries. We might change our ethics on that.
How interesting. There are certain things today that we consider wrong. Cloning, genetic engineering. There's so many things that we do that maybe one day there will come a time when we view it in a different way. The folk way will have changed. Sarah?
Also the exchange of ideas, because you don't only get your ideas from school anymore. Especially my generation, we're so tech savvy that we can, there's Twitter and there's Instagram. There's so many different ways to portray something differently and change the way you think about it, or ask you to think about it more critically because it was framed this way. So that it's more rapid, the exchange of ideas, and it's more diverse. And because of that, that changes how you think about things, always.
So why did the Catholic Church say that it is forbidden for lay people to possess Bibles? Why were Bibles off limits? Because that was a sharing of information. Wait a minute. Back in the Middle Ages, the priests and the clergy controlled the information. If you knew something, it was because it came from a teacher or from a member of the clergy, a priest or a bishop. Young people today, you tell them that something is right or wrong, they are Googling it and finding out themselves, wait a minute, just because you say it's wrong, there are all sorts of people who are doing it. Follow me? You can tell me that birth control is wrong, but I just Googled the fact that 98% of Roman Catholic women, according to the Pew Center, are using birth control. What gives? There you go. So as a result, ethical relativists then tend to tell us that we need to be tolerant, but follow the argument now. So if I'm a relativist and I say that we need to be tolerant, what did I just do? I just made a universal statement. So if you're a relativist, you tend to believe that everyone should be tolerant, right? Your granddaughter, grandson, we're going back to the issue of same-sex marriage, right? Well, it's not, I don't believe that, but okay, relativists are telling me that people are different, I have to be tolerant. Okay, but then suddenly, thou shalt be tolerant becomes this universal norm.